Hey, David. Hey, Chris, Peter. Hey, Chris, I know you said you weren't going to be here. I'm assuming you have to drop off shortly. You told me you would make me the host. And I see that now. Thank you. Is it also set to record?
Yeah, I'm recording it, so I'll post the recording when it's done.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
All right, thanks for sharing that message from MBI as well earlier. I just saw it after I saw the other one in from the other gentleman from the education superhighway.
Yeah, no problem.
I forwarded that, but all right.
That message looks very promising. We're ready to start applying for that over here in Westport, I think.
Are you?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm trying to get this shared screen out of the way. How do I do that?
It's your shared screen, I guess. If you go to the green button, you might be able to. I don't see it being shared on this end, but it's probably just on yours. If you press the green,
There. Huh?
probably be able to cancel it.
Well, I tried that and it didn't do it, so I'll keep working at it.
Okay.
There, that got it out of the way. Looks like a beautiful day behind you there, Bob.
Oh yeah, it's not live, but it was that day and it is today.
It is a nice day.
Yeah, right. All
We're,
right.
if we got a minute to ask you a question while we're waiting for others to come in.
Sure.
We've been told by our town lawyers that it's maybe difficult to set up a municipal light plant without getting authorization from the state. Have you run into that in Fairhaven?
No, in fact, we were told the opposite, that we would there was no major hurdles once we passed the vote at town meeting. And I thought I had sent you something on this in the past, but maybe it was something else.
You have, yeah.
Yeah, but they we have already been in Fairhaven established as a municipal light, and we have excuse me, the only thing we haven't done is act on it because we're still not sure what structure we're going to move,
Okay.
forward
So
with.
you haven't actually set up your municipal light plant?
No, but all we had to do is set up the board for it and put it in operation. There was no further steps that we needed to take according to our council. So
okay.
Yeah.
If you have any documents on that, I'd appreciate it because I'm getting pushback from, like, we have KP Law as our lawyers, and they keep finding obstructions rather than ways to open up the path. So
yeah, I will, if you, after the meeting, if you send me a reminder,
I will do that. I will
okay,
do that.
thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Because we're really beginning to move on
All right.
various fronts.
Good for you.
And we're talking to Unibank as a possible financial partner in our public-private partnership with Entry Point. And I think they deal with Fairhaven too.
Who was it you were dealing with?
Unibank?
Unibank. Oh, okay. You're looking at them as a partner, like a financial backer?
They would be
bonding.
part of the private partnership that we would work with. Our MLP would work with them in a public-private partnership.
Oh, okay. All right.
And, we had discussions with them and together with Entry Point this week, and we're going to follow up on that. So,
okay.
Well, here's another handsome gentleman on the screen. Hi.
How are you?
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Bob, how are you? How you doing, Mr. Cole?
Good.
Excellent.
Good. We're building up some people here. We're just gonna kind of give it a few more minutes to see who might join us before we get much more involved, and then we'll do a little roundtable introductions for everyone. And I received, let's see, did I forward an email that came into me today? I think I was planning to and didn't get to it. I received something gonna look for it right now, from Craig and in Hampton, who has sent a message a couple days ago about let's see, about the pushback they were getting there.
AQB.
Yeah, and he sent another one. I asked him if he had if he could send a clean copy of that prior document, and he sent a new one that they had just received. Let me see if I can find that right here now. Forward it to you guys.
That's disgusting what those people are doing.
Yeah, it's they're fighting hard in the opposite direction, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Still
Trying to keep us back in the 20th century.
Yeah. All right, Craig.
John, where are you? What town are you in?
I actually live in Mashpee, Massachusetts, on the Cape.
Okay, but you'd work for.
I work for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance,
Okay.
Community Broadband Networks Initiative. So we
Okay.
our website communitynest.org, and I can say this to everyone else as well, but we're a go-to, I would say, resource, as we've been tracking municipal broadband and community broadband for the past 16 years. And so our website, I guess you could consider the Amazon of all things community broadband and broadband policy and what have you.
Oh, good. Oh, well, I need help. So
We do a weekly podcast, we do a bi-weekly live stream, and we publish a lot of reports and policy briefs, but our website is more like a news website, where pretty much every one of our stories are about communities that are building, whether full-on municipal networks, open access, public-private partnerships.
Okay, and tell me the link to it, or the name of the website.
I'll put it in the chat for you here. It's communitynets.org.
Okay, good.
You'll see my byline on a number of the stories, and that's
okay.
that website's my responsibility, my baby.
Good.
Yeah, Sean helped me when I was trying to put something in the Mass Municipal Association monthly, the Beacon, they call it there, about the group, and he helped me a little bit with that, and so he's been a good resource to refer to. Met him initially at a Mass Broadband Institute training session back in October last year, but so yeah, let's it's 4:08. What I'll do is let me open up the participants here and just go through. I know a lot of us are people have been on before. I think I see one new name here for today so far, but why don't we just go through and introduce ourselves to everyone else, and then we can get started on the agenda for today. So I am Bob Espandola. I usually coordinate these meetings, but they're monthly meetings that we've held usually around this time of the month, each month. A lot of times we have guest speakers that come in. Today we don't have anyone scheduled. We've been trying to get a couple different people on, and this month wasn't able to do that. But we can have a general discussion about a number of areas, and I think next month we'll definitely be able to get a couple of the presenters I had in mind with things going on. So next up on the screen is David Cole.
Okay, I'm from Westport, a member of our Internet Advisory Committee, and we are starting to get moving on getting our municipal light plant established and enter into a public-private partnership, probably with Entry Point, and fill out the roster of various members of the private partnership.
All right, thank you. And Sean Gonzalez.
Hi, everyone. Met a few of you before. I'm Sean Gonzalez. I'm a senior reporter, editor, and communications team lead work for the ILSR, Institute for Local Self-Reliance Community Broadband Networks Initiative, and communitynets.org is our website. It is the nation's leading storehouse of information on every community broadband network in the country, at least the ones that we've been able to track over the 16 years, and where various folks are. A lot of it's policy stuff. We do podcasts, live streams, very active. We do tribal broadband boot camps. I'm on the board of Open Cape, the Middle Mile Network here in Southeastern Mass. Our organization is based in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, but I am based in Mashpee, Massachusetts on the Cape. And I'm also an advisory board member with FalmouthNet.
Thank you. And Brian Espinola, no relation to me, name spelled differently.
I was with the city of New Bedford.
Thank you, Brian. And Felix Zayas, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, how you doing? I'm with Western Massachusetts in the town of Wilbraham. I'm sure you've probably seen Tom Newton face prior. So I'm stepping in and learning as much as I can. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Felix. And Jonathan Nunes.
Hi, everyone. This is Jonathan Nunes. I'm the Assistant IT Director for the City of New Bedford. I'm staying off camera because I do have to a prior commitment that I'm going to have to leave a little early. So I just will be jumping off. But Brian will be here the whole time. So we'll talk after.
Okay, great. And Peter Chase.
Yep, Peter Chase from Dartmouth. We just started our broadband committee like a year ago, working with Entry Point now to commission our study. Hopefully, have the study done within the next few months, and then move on from there.
All right, thanks. Before you do jump off, Jonathan, I know last time you were able to give us an update on what's been going on in New Bedford in terms of your contracted work with the consultant and broadband in terms of information requests. And can you give us an update on that before you have that out?
No problem. Yeah. So just to get everyone quickly up to speed, we've contracted with CTC to make sort of a make ready broadband to the home initiative. We've been moving forward with that. The next step that we're looking at right now is working on a survey instrument to get about 300-400 people from the city to answer the survey through phone calls, and they have a phone center that they use. Basically asking people's opinion of what kind of services we could offer if we were to get someone in, or some sort of broadband company to purchase, looking at price points, also kind of talking about what their service is like now, which for most people here, probably all we have is Comcast, so I'm sure that's not going to be too positive. So that's kind of where we're at. We're working on survey instruments, and in conjunction with this, Sean Gross, who has been working with the city, kind of a separate consultant, he has been really pinpointing the speed test data that's come from the FCC. He's been working on challenging some of the stuff that's coming from them. So part of this study that we were able to get CTC to agree to is we're going to actually put Raspberry Pi devices, which are just little boxes that go into people's routers that kind of determine speeds and seeing if wiring could be an issue, routers could be an issue. But we're hoping that with that data, we can present that over to the FCC to kind of challenge some of their maps. That is also part of the consultant with CTC. So a lot of moving parts, but it's definitely moving forward.
That's very interesting. I did share the contact information for Sean with someone that I was on a call with yesterday with the Cape Cod Technology Council, which is this group similar to ours, which you might recall in the last meeting, we had a couple people, Eugene Curry and Stephen Smith from that group that joined our meeting, and they invited me to join their meeting yesterday. I only was able to stay on for about a half an hour, and then I had to jump to another call, but they one of the members from Bourne was actually very he was complaining about the speed test data and trying to get information out of mass broadband, and expressed some frustration. So when I explained to him what New Bedford had done through Sean's leadership there, he was very interested in that, especially the collaboration that Sean did with the school. For people that don't know, the school department stepped up in a big way and helped the city by allowing this testing to go through students, so that they could test from their equipment that they're using, school equipment, school issued equipment in their home to get their speed test data. And Sean's that the results of the testing showed that the FCC data about New Bedford was far off what they found to be actual. So they're contesting that. And so this gentleman from Bourne was very interested in replicating that kind of a process down there. So I put him in touch with Sean. Sean has also been working. I was hoping we would see him today because he and I worked together, but mostly his effort was involved in putting together a draft document to send over to the Attorney General. I know this group did not meet last month. And it was the month prior to that, we had the Attorney General's office in, several members of their office in, and talked to us about, competition, lack of competition and concerns we have with that and how it relates to antitrust laws, et cetera. And we agreed to put a draft document together to summarize our concerns. So Sean worked on that, and I just recently put some edits into that document that I thought might help, sent it back to Sean, and then we were hoping to actually review it with the group today and see if we could get that approved to send out. But I'm not sure if he's going to make it on the call. But he's been a great asset to this group in terms of providing tons of information. He's a tremendous background there in this field. So I just noticed someone new came on the call. I think that wasn't here initially. Michael Solitro.
Yeah, it's Mike Solitro with Certex Broadband Solutions.
Yeah, so
Okay. You've joined us in the
Yeah,
past.
Joy Laurel couldn't make it today.
How you doing, Mike?
How are you? How you doing, Sean?
Okay. And okay, so one of the things that just came in today, we had a message forwarded to us from Chris McClure in Watertown, and I think I might have sent a redundant message to the group. But it was the new announcement from the Mass Broadband Institute. And let me see if I can find that here and share it with everyone in case you haven't already seen it. It's let's see.
I got a copy of it. Thanks very much.
Yes, I think that's something that the Broadband Infrastructure Gap Program.
Network program.
Yeah, that's something that looks like it could really help communities that are in a position to be able to take advantage of it. And I don't know, Sean Gonzalez, you have some good knowledge of this already, or is this something you want to talk about? Or
No, actually, Mike probably knows more about this program than I do. But gap networks generally refer to very often wireless sort of solutions. Whether you're talking CBRS or some kind of fixed wireless type stuff. Gap networks, are not the kind of community-wide networks that I think a lot of folks in the coalition are thinking about. But I'm
okay.
fairly certain that that's probably what this program is for. Is for more targeted projects.
Oh, that's interesting, because I'm just looking through the document here. It doesn't specifically refer to a specific technology, I don't think.
Right.
Mike, are you seeing that anywhere in your read?
Well, as far as like a network, a wireless network to pick up homes, I mean, that's not really the preferred connection method.
Right. But Mike, when you hear the term gap networks, that
I'm just thinking of filling just a small population, and quite honestly, Sean, I don't know how they would work with. You can't build them straight out. There's no economy of scale to just pick up spotted people. You almost have to, you have to kind of do it for an entire service area.
Yeah. I'm thinking.
I mean, that's part of the problem. They're struggling with that in Connecticut too, but places like Maine, we're working in Vermont now, and it's a little bit more wide. Like we're building out an area in southern Vermont. There's like 22 towns, but they're picking up 5,000 customers though that are currently unserved. So you don't have anything like that in Massachusetts. They certainly don't have that in Connecticut.
Right. But also knowing Josh a little bit at MBI, I'm thinking I think gap networks really refer to like the kind of stuff that they're doing with like MDUs and setting up like wireless networks.
Yeah, it
For
could,
MDUs
it
and
could
so
be,
forth.
you know, it could be that, and this is why I was thinking.
And then who serves that though, Sean? That's the real question. They could set up the wireless networks inside the MDUs that might not be served,
Yeah,
but
nonprofits.
so a nonprofit would serve that. So there's a recurring cost that goes on with that.
Right, right.
For those who may not be familiar with the what MDU stands for, multi-dwelling unit, so multi
Apartment
unit
buildings, yeah.
apartment buildings, yeah.
Condos, those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when Josh was last when he last joined us, one of the things he tried to emphasize is that, you know, these capital, even this announcement, it sounds like a lot of money, $145 million, but you know, that will only go so far when you're talking about, you know, major capital projects, especially in larger municipalities. So what he tried to emphasize, or what he kind of recommended to us, is to think in terms of building something in your community that you can then, you know, build off of in the future. So if you have, like,
Right.
so say for example, the city of New Bedford, the city of Fall River, those are ones locally that I would think of that would have, you know, broad-based, you know, applications for that MDUs that are underserved right now. If there could be infrastructure built around those that in the future then could become part of a bigger network, you're starting, you know, to create something that you can then build on. And I think that's what he was suggesting that we all focus on is, you know, small wins, get something, start to build some momentum.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, you know,
Can,
that's
can I
something.
can I just say that I know Josh pretty well and kind of have a pretty good understanding of like the bead landscape in Massachusetts and in general. And gap networks, almost like I'll give you an example. In Baltimore, that there's a nonprofit named Project Waves. They serve low income MDUs. They were able to get a philanthropic contribution that ran fiber to the building, and then they didn't rewire the buildings. They used the existing cabling. They used this wireless this conversion bit of technology that converts fiber into cable, and they're serving, you know, thousands of low income apartment buildings at an operational cost of about $16 per month per user. So so it's these kind of gap, and those would be referred to as those are what gap networks. So I'm almost certain that what MBI has in mind here is funding for projects similar to that, because MBI also realizes the state is getting peanuts and BEAD funding, and all of these non-rural communities that are hoping to get BEAD funding ain't going to get it. So maybe think targeted, small, something that you can build off. But the idea that there's going to be funding for, you know, a full build out of a you know, a more metro area is probably super unrealistic from the MBI's perspective.
Right. So there is a, you know, a much more in-depth document attached if you open that link, and you can, it talks about eligible projects, and, you know, so on. So, you know, it's just something to be aware of. Maybe if we, if people look into this and you're not clear on whether it's something that your community can or should try to take advantage of, maybe we can ask Josh for clarification that can be shared with this group, or we can ask him to come on to our call next month. You know, the other thing that's going to happen, from my understanding, that the last time Josh talked to us, he said that we could expect sometime in November for the BEAD challenge process to be open. And when in the meeting that I was on yesterday, again with the Cape Cod Technology Council, one of the gentlemen there mentioned that he was in a meeting with Josh recently, and Josh indicated November 13th was a target day that they were looking to, you know, have that open. So, you know, the timeline announced and what the rules of engagement would be, whatever that is. So I'm thinking that a November meeting may be a good time to, you know, to really have Josh back to explain, you know, what this is all about and make sure people have no questions. We could also ask them, you know, about this program if people still have questions at that point in time. Yeah, people think that's a good idea to do that next meeting in November. Those two topics are
Fine.
all right. Well, so yeah, I think on looking at our agenda, we've kind of touched on a few of these items that I had listed here already. Now, update request for information for public-private partnerships. So we had New Bedford updated us on that, and I thought maybe Courtney, who has joined us from Falmouth in the past several times, he was also a part of this meeting I attended yesterday, and he said that they have I didn't have his permission to forward this email that he sent over to me. So I just wanted to hold back until I had that. But yeah, there might have been a couple details he didn't want me to share, but the bottom line that I know he wouldn't mind me sharing. I can tell you, he said that they sent a request for information out to 20 entities, and they got 7 responses, and they're starting to review. They're evaluating the responses at their meeting in Falmouth Town Hall at 7 p.m., which I think maybe tonight. It's a public meeting, so please feel free to join us. So that if anyone's interested and you find the Falmouth meeting of their broadband committee, but this is a request for information that they sent out for public-private partnership. So it sounds similar to what you're going through in Westport, David, except that you've selected an entity to partner with out of the gate. They are going in a more broad-based search of other candidates that could be potential partners first. New Bedford is kind of on a similar but different path, working with CTC, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure if he's still on the call, Jonathan, but the other thing that they're doing with CTC is trying to establish, good potential partners for public-private partnership. So
Yeah, that's the same for New Bedford.
yeah, so that's it was described as a maybe almost a year-long process before you have someone on board there, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right, and we had talked about New Bedford, Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, and Dartmouth possibly joining forces to go through a similar process to what Falmouth and New Bedford are going through. And then and Westport was at one point thinking about doing that, but then they kind of went off on their own directly with Entry Point. But our group kind of decided we would hold off a little bit on that until we had information from the process that New Bedford was going through, and maybe Falmouth, and see if we want to kind of re-engage as a group to do something more near term. When I saw this announcement that came out earlier today about the 145 million, at first I was thinking, well, maybe this is something we want to discuss and re-engage in, because those funds can go through a public-private partnership. But as Sean outlined, this is probably not going to be anything near what we're looking for in terms of building out our local networks. I did want to also mention that there's a program, when we talked about Wi-Fi before, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council up in the greater Boston area has been selected as they're a regional planning agency, but they were selected by Mass Broadband Institute to try to help facilitate getting Wi-Fi into apartment buildings. And in Fairhaven, we're been looking at, we received a grant from the Community Compact Cabinet program a couple of years ago now to install broadband in our Fairhaven Housing Authority apartments. And we haven't been able to get that project off the ground for a number of different reasons. But we've engaged them to discuss the possibility that they might be able to support us from a program management standpoint to get that built with the funds we have already available. But that program is out there, and their goal is to help get as many as possible of these housing units that are underserved right now, you know, to have, you know, internet service in their housing. So it's something I'd encourage people to look at. Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Also, okay, we have, there was an effort for digital equity and mapping work going on in our area. And I don't know if anybody, I know that in the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District, they have a team that's been working on that, mapping assets for digital equity in the various communities. And I was hoping to have a representative from Serpent on the call tonight to kind of explain how that's working. And the fellowship that I mentioned in prior meetings, there's a fellow working for them and dedicating some of her time to that currently. But does anybody have anything they'd like to share in terms of what's going on in your various communities and with regard to digital equity efforts?
I just mentioned that we're going to be meeting with the Serpent liaison person tomorrow afternoon to hear what they have to say. To possible application to Westport.
Oh, okay, for digital equity work or
Yes.
okay,
Digital
all right.
equity planning. Yes.
Okay, all right, Sean, I see your hand up. Sean Gonzalez, go ahead.
Just really quick, because I know it's at the center of the digital equity universe with regards to the Affordable Connectivity Program. There's still no funding. So ACP is going to run out in probably April, summer at the latest. There's nothing's been there's no formal mechanism in Congress that's been introduced to replenish the fund. It's about $600 million a month burn rate. So it'll be out of funds, yeah, in about April, according to our dashboard. And I think everyone at this point agrees. And I heard yesterday in a call with the White House that the Biden administration is looking to make a $6 billion supplemental request to kick the can down the road a little bit with ACP. But there needs to be a long-term solution for ACP. And I think it's not only important as it relates to digital equity, because I think regardless of how affordable you can make broadband prices in a community, for most people, there'll probably always be a chunk of folks in the community that will need some form of subsidy for internet service. So there needs to be a long-term funding solution for ACP, even though ACP deals with the consequence and not the cause. And also ACP is not only important, I think, to the end users, but it's also an important program from a business case standpoint of view, because if you're in if you've got a market where a huge chunk of folks are going to be ACP eligible, you need to know that steady stream of revenue is coming in, or otherwise it can really drastically change the numbers and take rates that you need to be sustainable in operating a network.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, so the original ACP program wasn't that 14 billion?
It is, yes.
Okay.
And that'll be at zero in April.
All right, and how, so that's been going at 600 a month. It's
yeah, 52 million eligible households, and there's about 20 million enrolled. So the better we do at enrolling people, the faster the money goes out. So it's an urgent issue on the affordability front.
Oh, 62 million, and how many was it? 20 million are enrolled?
52 million eligible households and 20 million
Okay.
enrolled. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so it's a good that made a pretty big dent in that. I mean, but like you said, that's looking at it in reverse, I guess you'd say if the funds go away, then that's how many people will be dropped. Not necessarily, maybe people that you got enrolled who see the value of it and will pay it on their own. I think that's probably the hope of the program, but you're probably going to lose a lot of them. I'm guessing. So, all right. So that's something that maybe there's an advocacy effort down the road if there's, a bill introduced to try and, I'm sure there'll be tons of people advocating for that when that time comes. Okay. Do have any of the members here been dealing with the education superhighway? I was asked about that on the call that I was on with Cape Cod Technology Council yesterday, and I told them that we, directly in this group have not been, we haven't invited anyone from that group to our calls. We haven't been interacting with them directly, but Sean Gross, from New Bedford, I know has mentioned numerous times their work, and that that's something we may want to be, thinking about in the future. So Sean, I see your hand up if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so we know those folks well. We've done some podcasts with them. They are part of the White House's effort to really engage and increase enrollment with ACP. They've been really successful. They're a good group on the digital equity side of things.
Okay, all right. So that might be, if people in the group are interested, maybe that's something we can ask someone from that group to attend one of our meetings and give us an overview of what they do and see if there's anything that but I don't know if there's, I want to make sure there's interest in that before I reach out to them. If people think that would be helpful. Anybody? No. Okay. Well, we can, or maybe what I can do is ask him if it's the same gentleman that was on the call again yesterday, was from that group. He's the one that sent forward the information that I forwarded to you about the MBI program that just came out. So maybe what I can do is just say to him, hey, there are some members of our organization who are working in the digital equity area. And I know some of them are not on the call today. We have a limited group here today. But what would you recommend that you could talk to us about that might be helpful? And then I can forward that to you to see if it's of interest. So, okay. Let's see. So we had this email that came through about organized campaigns against public and private partnerships for broadband. That was from the town of Hampton. I don't know if everyone saw that, or the new one that I sent over today. Let's see. And is everyone familiar with what I'm talking about there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that. It's, so I know some people are pretty upset with the way that's message is being delivered. And this group out in Hampton, the community of Hampton is really fighting that battle right now, as they go to a town meeting, I think this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, or it might be tomorrow. I don't remember.
I think it's October 30th. That's our neighboring town is Hamden.
Okay, you think it's the 30th, so next
Yeah.
week?
Yeah, so
It is the 30th. I just saw that.
Okay, yeah, so they, they are doing what they can to fight that, but I know, some communities have expressed, I know David said in Westport, they didn't really experience that over there, and in Fairhaven, we didn't either. At the time we were going through our municipal light, establishing that, but we are not anywhere near the point where, we're looking at a project to fund and going in front of town meeting. So that my guess is that, they're not utilizing their resources on something that's preliminary, but as soon as you come up with a real proposal for your town, then they're going to try to hit you. I'm going to get to you in just a second. Sean, is my screen showing this latest thing with the Halloween?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the one that was just sent over today, but yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so we're seeing this pop up all across the country. I guess we probably first started to notice it in Maine, because Maine's whole state program is very much in support of community broadband networks and sort of this alternative to just handing over a bunch of money to the incumbents and praying for the best. And so the Alliance for Quality Broadband, they have a very slick, nice looking website, and it's full of how to put it nicely, misinformation. And it's an entire grassroots campaign. Charter has been identified as one of the funders. There's the NPR and our organization have done some reporting on it, but we're seeing it all across. But I think it underscores something that sometimes gets overlooked early on in the planning process, which is being blindsided by these campaigns, and particularly officials and community leaders that are involved in moving these forward should really, think about how important that public education piece is, and how once you get serious about a plan, I mean, just to be clear, the big monopoly incumbents see municipal broadband, even public-private partnerships, as an existential threat. And particularly if it's a larger community, I don't pretend to have been a fly on the wall in meetings, but I can tell you that there are a lot of campaigns going on across the country. They make them look like they're local campaigns. The Taxpayer Alliance may pop up at a certain point. There's certain telltale signs that you see with all of these campaigns, and I think it just underscores the fact of how important it is that the closer it becomes apparent that a community is getting serious about building out a network that will, essentially, drive Comcast out of business in town, so to speak, or at least eat into a significant chunk of their monopoly market share, they're going to fight it. And communities need to be aware that that's the fight that you're getting into.
So Sean, you say that some of the things on their website are not true. It's not debatable, right? What you're talking, because if we had some good examples of that, I'm wondering if that would be when we write out a letter, finish a letter to the Attorney General. Maybe it might be worth putting something in there and as an example of what's going on.
Right. You know what I'll do is I'll put in the link. Chris and I talked about AQB kind of a lot with some examples going kind of over AQB's website and some examples they hold up as, their big framing is municipal broadband's a failure. It's going to leave taxpayers on the hook. It's a failure. And it relies on sort of the general ignorance. And I don't mean that in a critical way, but that people don't know how many municipal networks are in operation successfully across the country, and they tend to pick on the same handful. And it's sort of like making the argument of like, look at these 3 restaurants that failed. Why should you build a restaurant? Are there some failures? Yes, but those are understood, and the stories as to why they're failures are misrepresented. And furthermore, there are some networks that I've seen AQB identify as being failures. Fairlawn Gig in Ohio is a perfect example. They're doing so well that they recently dropped everybody that had 300 megabit symmetrical fiber service got raised to a gig at no charge. Everybody that was at a gig price went down to $50 a month. They're offering a 2.5 gig, a 5 gig package for $75 and $99 respectively. And my response to that is if Fairlawn Gigs is a failure, I would love for my local provider to fail like Fairlawn is failing, because you won't see that really anywhere outside of communities that have municipal networks. And so I will put in the chat the link to the podcast where Chris and I talk about it, and there's some specific examples in there that we kind of go over, give you an overview of what AQB is about and looking at some of the claims that they make.
Oh, good, thank you. And you mentioned Maine is in the government. It sounds like the state government is really advocating for
Maine and Vermont.
So how are they doing that? What could we learn from them in Massachusetts that I'm sure they're, this group is a small group that, meets once a month, and, we do what we can, but I'm sure there must be advocacy efforts in Massachusetts to kind of replicate what they're doing in Maine and Vermont. But is there, who's doing that?
Yeah, so the short story is that both Maine and Vermont, but they're both, they're very rural states, and so it's not really an apples to apples comparison in a lot of ways. But Vermont has put the communication union districts at the center of their model. Communication union districts are essentially much like water districts or school districts that allow 1 or 2 towns to come together. I think the whole state now, pretty much with a few exceptions, is part of a communication union district. I think they've got about a dozen. And that's at the center of Vermont's plan, their B plan and everything to move forward. As a matter of fact, their B plan was so heavily focused on community broadband that I heard that NTIA kind of behind the scenes said, hey, you're putting your thumb a little bit too much on the scale of, the public side and not enough on the private side. But but there are some public-private partnerships underway there. You know, Mike knows, I'm sure, a lot about them. You know, New Hampshire, there's some communities that are doing that, and then in Maine, there's a lot of public-private partnerships. But I think in those instances, what really drove it was a realization that there needs to be some regionalization in rural areas, and also hand in hand with the realization that markets that are sparsely populated rural areas are just not attractive to private ISPs.
So rather than rely on communities to just figure out who should be in their own local network, the state developed these communication union districts to said, you know, here's.
No, it was more from the ground up. It was more that individual communities voted to whether or not they wanted to join these different geographical communication union districts. EC Fiber was the first CUD, as they call it.
That's where they got that. That's kind of what started this, and what it gave them, Bob, is it gave them a scale. We, along maybe over a decade ago, we tried to get all of remember the Wired West, all those Berkshire communities. We tried to get them to bind together to create one entity, and then all, you know, basically you'd have a scale there. The build costs would be, you know, more economical. Operations and maintenance would be more economical, but they decided to go their own paths, and each town created their own municipal light plant. That was their vehicle. But in Vermont, I've got the map, and I can send it to everybody. I've got a PDF of it, because we're building the one in southern Vermont. So that really gave them scale to interest a competitive ISP to actually provide service. So when you've got, you know, you're getting the grant money, I think they got 26 million down at DV Fiber. NEK got 30 million this first round, and I think 30 million went to Northwest Fiberworks, and CV Fiber has funding. I'm not sure what their amount is, but they're building, and it's all over like the 22 towns. So what they've got is they're going to have a cable plant that's kind of reaching out to this first batch, but there can be extensions off of that once this first funding is used to pick up people that maybe are now not unserved. Maybe these are underserved, because that's really what you're talking about. A lot of these places, the cable company isn't upgrading anything. They're just going with their standard HFC cable plant, and as long as there's no competition, then, you know, they're fine with that. That's what this is right here. This is a kind of disinformation campaign. This thing you put up here with the 8.5 million. I'd like to know where that 8.5 million came from, where they threw that out. And I don't know how big I just did a quick search on population, and I don't know what the density is or what the road miles are, without a little bit more research to see where they came up with that number. But I can tell you that in Westfield, they're well over 55% of penetration rate. That they've got a take rate of around 55+%, and they're just offering internet service and phone, and it's VoIP phone. It's just a white labeled phone. It's a package, like one of these ones you could buy on your own, but they just bundle it with their package, and they've got that kind of a take rate, and they're providing symmetrical gig for somewhere around $79. And same thing, and they just passed their 2,000 customer in South Hadley. So I mean, this is really disinformation, because people want this, and you're 100% correct, Sean. This is an existential threat to the cable operator in that area, because eventually people are going to go, and as they get more successful, these prices could be lowered too, and you could get more service. And it's just simply not going to happen that the cable company with HFC technology is going to be able to even compete with that.
Now they have a framework that they're working under in these CUDs, you call them. So they must have some kind of a written, you know, maybe it's public information, what the rules are that they operate under.
Yeah, I can send you some links, and we've written a ton. We're getting ready to publish a report on the CUDs. We've written a ton even recently. That'll give you a good overview. But yeah, all that stuff's on their website.
I
And
mean,
they're
so,
far more ahead of, they are ahead of Maine, just so you know, because
Yes.
we're there too, and Maine doesn't have any kind of vehicle like that. The formation of these CUDs has helped them to get scale. Because you've got now, it's almost like getting an entire, county is really what you're talking about. You're getting a county almost to now bind together and, do it as one entity as opposed to each town doing things individually, because it's really difficult in Maine to do it. What happens is you get these types of flyers from the cable incumbent and they show up at the town meeting. It looks like it's just a resident. And, come to find out that that person is actually someone that works for the cable company or is paid by the cable company to attend the meeting and push out this kind of propaganda.
yeah, so, the reason why I was asking is it occurred to me that maybe, I don't know if there's a direct parallel here, but if some of the groups are like this group I mentioned along the South Coast here being the Haven, New Bedford, Dartmouth, and Mattapoisett, at least, we're interested in trying to, band together for some kind of a public-private partnership that, maybe even though maybe it's not the same thing, but maybe that's a starting point using the framework that they have used up there for these CUDs that, rather than reinvent the wheel. So it'd be good to take a look at that. And maybe, I know Falmouth, when they're going through this process of a public-private partnership on their own, but they understand that it has potential to grow beyond one community into a regional project. So yeah, that'd be good to learn more about that.
I can tell you, Falmouth, the numbers that they came up with in the high level are reasonable. And if you look at the cost, it's somewhere with, excluding the drops, because you're really not going to provide a drop until you actually gain the customer. And a lot of times those drops can be financed through the, the operator, the public, the private partner would finance those as the provider. And when you look at that number, I mean, you're only looking at a couple of $1,000s a home passed.
Yeah.
And really, if you think about that cost, each home, each taxpayer, each property home, well, what is that really going to do to their taxes? $2,000 over 25 or 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to get that kind of service. And but I can tell you, we've done quite a bit out on Cape Cod, and as soon as Comcast catches wind of anything gaining any traction, you can bet that they're going to do something to try to gain their customers.
You're already starting to see it. They're nervous around Falmouth. Open Cape, we just rolled out a 10 gig project with Main Street and Buzzards Bay.
Yeah, we just built that. We just did that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now miraculously, Comcast is talking about bringing fiber into certain areas and lowering the price and all these kind of things. It's amazing what competition does.
Well, what does that mean when they say that, Sean? Because it's interesting you say bringing fiber. Does that mean that they're just going to bring fiber to the node?
Probably.
Which is still an HFC, because right now in my town here in Plainfield, Connecticut, we have Breeze Line, terrible service, but that's what we have. Frontier hasn't even built here. When I saw trucks laying cable over the last couple of months, I noticed that it was, I inquired, what's this for? And they said, this is Comcast. And I said, I noticed you've got coaxial cable here. I said, are you building HFC? He says, yeah, that's what we're doing. So they're not building a fiber to the home network. They're building an expansion of their HFC network to compete with the other cable company that's here. So
What does HFC stand for?
Hybrid fiber coax.
That's what cable networks use, and the laws of physics. This isn't a commercial for the Fiber Broadband Association. Cable just doesn't compete in terms of reliability, quality, speeds, the whole 9 yards, bandwidth with cable. It's like comparing a cobblestone road to a modern highway in many ways.
It is. I mean, and right now, what we did out on Block Island is we basically, you got XGS PON, which is 10 gig symmetrical. That's the standard. Everybody that's putting in a PON network right now is using XGS PON. That's what they're deploying for their optics. So think about that. That's 32 people sharing a 10 gig circuit. And a lot of times they go into 64 splits. And you still can give people symmetrical gig with that kind of technology. They can't even get close to that. And that's really where, you know, this is misinformation is what they're throwing out, because really for the long term, you want to have a fiber network. That's really what it comes down to.
Right. Especially if you're talking, you know, it's just like with building roads and bridges. You want something that can handle peak capacity in 20, 30, 40 years, not something where you spend a bunch of money on to stand up some, you know, lesser technology, so to speak, to get something in the market quick. And then 5, 10 years down the road, you're right back at square one again because you got to replace everything. With
Yep.
fiber is just replacing the software on the ends of the network.
You gotta replace the equipment generally 7 to 10 years. It has a refresh cycle. So you're gonna be doing that anyways. And look at the way technology's changed. I can tell you just in the last 3 years, nobody was really talking about XGS-PON. That's what they're talking about now. Nobody's even looking at GPON. So what's
Right.
gonna happen in 5 years?
Wow. Yeah, so you know, I think looking at our agenda, we kind of made our way through the things we had listed on the agenda, but I'm wondering if anyone on the call wants to talk about anything else that we didn't have on the agenda, just in general. Anything you want to share that's going on in your community, or things you might want to suggest for future topics for another meeting? Anybody?
No, I think the public-private partnership route that you've been asking questions about and exploring is probably, if you're talking about an alternative to the same old Comcast or nothing, the public-private partnership route is probably the one that is the most feasible, given that Massachusetts is getting very little in BEAD money, and that has to be spent in unserved areas first, and even if I mean, look, the entire amount that Massachusetts is getting in BEAD money, it would probably be, you know, that's like a fraction that would pay for, say, a municipal network in Cambridge, you know, and then so you've got all of these communities who are vying for alternatives to what we've been doing for the past few decades, and you've got three choices. You can go hat in hand and beg and plead Comcast to do the right thing for the next 30 years. You can pursue a public-private partnership, or you can make the case that community-wide infrastructure, telecommunication infrastructure, is as important as electricity and sewers, which by comparison, a fiber network is a drop in a bucket compared to the money we spend on roads and schools and sewers and water systems. And we'll do it ourselves, and we're going to bond for it. And we have a different incentive. We've got 30 years to pay the bond back. A private company is looking for a return on investment in 3 to 5 years. That's the cold, harsh reality.
Could I just add a little footnote on what we are now thinking about here in Westport? We're thinking of trying to do it on our own, starting with a municipal light plant, but then having a public-private partnership, and that we're trying to find various sources of financing, USDA and MBI and others, to help build the infrastructure. And then once we get the system up and running in 5 or 6 years, to then have the public partner buy out the private partner using long-term municipal debt that would be paid for by the users, and get it at municipal rates and make it into a publicly owned company, and have it a viable operation so that when you come to market, you've got something that you can show that it's really happening. And we're talking about, it's not going to be a big scale. It's going to be 5, 6, 7,000 customers possibly. But IntraNet is interested in working with us to try to build that up as a sort of model of a local effort that could then be expanded more broadly throughout the area. And we, rather than trying to meld our work in with the 4 or 5 neighboring towns, our inclination, I think now, is to go ahead and try to set it up. Maybe down the road, we can find a way to join together on various sub aspects of what we're going to be doing, but not wait for all the group to come together to do it as a unified entity. That's our story.
Yeah. So yeah, the public-private partnership, as you mentioned, Sean, I think seems like an appealing avenue for most communities, because there is a, an element of risk here that even though it's like your argument about it being a utility, and it's just, when you look at communities that are strapped and they're going through overrides, and they don't really completely understand this concept, it's difficult to say, hey, we need to spend this amount of money to build new infrastructure at this time. So if that's just my own view on looking at it from comments I've received from people in our community. But it's someone that has the financial wherewithal to fund a project and invest in your community to do that, to the benefit of the community in some way, that speaks volumes about the finances of doing something like that, because you don't have people investing millions of dollars in a project if it wasn't going to have a return for them. But we'll see how this goes as we move forward in future months. And I'd love to have feedback from anybody about future meetings and agenda topics. Like I said, I'm gonna at least reach out to Mass Broadband and Institute and ask Josh Eichen or some other members from MBI to join us next month to talk about the BEAD challenge process at least. And if people are interested, then we can talk about this other new grant program that was just announced today. If anyone has anything else, please let me know. But I think we're kind of through our agenda for today. So unless anyone has any other comments, I think we can probably close this one out.
I just have one quick question. This public-private term it's one new to me, and I'm kind of gathering what it means just by listening to you talk. So I think I understand, but like, what would be an example of a company that would be a private partner? As maybe just name a few guys, right? I guess.
I could answer something like that. I mean, one model, we've actually got a white paper on it. You could probably download it from our website, but essentially what you could do is you could build the municipality, or the entity, the public entity would build the cable plant. That would just be the fiber optic cable, and then you could enter into a contract with an ISP/operator to operate and maintain, and it'll be like a duration, could be 10 years, 20 years, and you set some rates, you set some parameters, so that's way, but they get, they get some exclusivity on that network for that. And then essentially what they're doing is they're operating, so there's no operational exposure for you. That's all done by them, and that can include drops too. So even if you're competing with the cable company, there's some risk on them, but you're essentially getting some kind of a fee. Usually there's a cost per home pass for access to your market. So that private company would pay you so much a home pass for access to the market. So that's where that comes in. That's why it's the public company is, the town is basically owns the cable plant. So you've always got that. And then the private partner comes and delivers competitive high bandwidth service, and they're getting access to your market without spending the capital expenditure that you would have to spend, because they can't get that kind of 30-year bonding in the, as you know, in the private space. They're looking for return on investment. I think that was just brought up. I mean, they want to see that in 5 years or less. And you can't get that in these types of areas that are not as dense.
Oh, okay. That makes very good sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Felix, I just dropped a link into the chat to what you see on the screen right now, which is something I found in prior research that to be a pretty good overview document. I don't know if anyone else has anything else they've come across that's good or a better description, or Mike, if you have a white paper that you want to drop into the chat or send by email to us, I can distribute.
I can, if you send me like a separate email, just make sure I have everybody's email, and I'll send you that.
I'll drop in a report that we did in 2020. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, Right,
Is
there's
there-
all
there-
different kinds of models. That's just one that we've looked at, and we've actually offered to some, different communities up in Maine. And that and even Google, if it's a certain size, but it has to be really large, they're even interested in this type of thing too. Because if you think about it, they're not having to put out the capital to build a network, sort of like you own the road, and then you're kind of collecting some kind of a fee for access to the road, kind of like a toll road, and they're running their service on that. So there's a business case for them to do it. Whereas it becomes very difficult if they've got to build their own capital, bring their own capital in, and still and get out there and now compete with an incumbent that's been there for the last 50 years.
Well, I just add, I think there are many different approaches to the public-private partnerships, and so
There are.
talking about is just one, but there are various others, and we're coming at it from about the reverse direction of looking to the private partnership to come up with the initial capital, and then once you get a viable enterprise, the public partnership buying them out with longer-term public debt.
Also like the network build itself, you're saying?
No, you build the network with the private partner leading the way and raising the money. And then
Gotcha.
once you get it up and running, you then do public financing, public debt to try to buy out the private partner at the end of 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's an arrangement where the private partner would have to presumably agree up front that that's something they want to
Yeah.
allow you to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna send a report that we did. It's very extensive. It's just case models, but there's basically 6 varieties essentially of public-private partnerships, and there's public-private partnerships in name only, and then there's real public-private partnerships. So the more skin the town has in the game financially, the more leverage you have at the negotiating table. But good luck finding a private partner that is going to let you own the assets if you're not putting any money into the project.
Yeah, I think what David's suggesting is that you would put money into it, but only after a period of time where you're convinced that it's something that the risk level is much lower. And so you'd ask, why would they want to do that? And I think I'm familiar with what David's talking about because we spoke with Entry Point over a period of time too. And they were suggesting that certain partners may be willing to entertain that as a way to get a project off the ground.
Well, let me just add, we've already put public money in to build the backbone, and we're now looking for a private partner to build off of that out to the community. And then, but to have an agreement, and once that system is built, that we can possibly buy them out and take it over as a full public entity. So I think there are many different ways to do it, and you need to look for the right one to fit your community.
Yeah.
And to work and to be efficient and successful.
Yeah. So, more, this is what's helpful about this group getting together is to try to share information and, there's some great resources out there that most of us are not familiar with. And it's really helpful to have people like Michael and Sean, coming onto a call like this year,
Right.
their information with us and to help us, move forward. So, I'm trying to copy these links into a separate document to save so I can send them out later. Once I don't know if once we lose the meeting this concludes, I don't know if I can get back to this chat.
The recording should have all the notes in it.
Oh, okay, all right, good.
Usually it's
Now,
Copied it
downloadable.
too.
having
Great.
said that, I know Michael, you were suggesting that if I could send you the list of emails, I don't think what we have now is set up as the gentleman from Watertown, Chris McClure, who set up this.
I can send it to you if you want a photo.
Yeah.
I'll send you.
Yeah, because I have
And I'm still I got to look for this. I can't do it while I'm here with a million screens in front of me, but I'll get you this CUD thing too.
Yeah, all right, that'd be
Snap.
great. Awesome. And then what I'll do is I have like a list that comes up automatically. It's everyone who subscribes is automatically on that, but I don't know how to target individual members there. So, all right, well, this is good. I think it's a great meeting and appreciate everyone participating. And I look forward to continuing to share information. We'll get something out for November. meeting, date. All righty. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Nice meeting you all.
You
Take
too.
care.
Thanks.